Now, continued Friday's Gemara, Daf Yud Beis Amud Al, Kumlen about Gemara, Daf Yud Beis Amud Al. The Gemara continues explaining the Megillah. Chel Poras Umadai Hapartimim. See, it says, one place says that Poras Umadai, part of the Madai were like officers, low-ranking officials. Uksiv, and the other part says, Lemalkim Madai Poras, like actually the Madai were all the princes. They made a condition between the two. If we produce the kings, then you'll produce the governors and officers. And if you produce the kings, we will produce. In other words, they alternated. You want to show them as well. That Achashverosh is done the close of the kohen. How do we know? You want to show the splendor of his greatness. It says, for honor and splendor. These days were up at one of them said, so what happened was, first he made a party for all the nations, and then afterwards he made a party only for the people of Shushan. So was that a smart move strategically or not? So Chadam and Melapikli is intelligent, clever. Chadam and Melapikli was a fool. Mandam and Melapikli was clever, shapir, but he did the right thing, the Kodev. First, he invited those far away, the Bnei Moshe, because the people, the locals, if he does anything wrong to them, you can always appease them. The nation far away, because they're always threatening to rebel, as the Medrash says, and they wanted to rebel. So therefore, he felt he has to appease them first. The fool, you always need make sure your nucleus is strong. So he should have first dealt with the locals, but they should and the foreigners far away. They come and they whatever it is, they complain. They what do you call it? If they complain, then at least he knows he has a local that will help him out. At least he knows he has a local that will help him out. Sorry, somebody just asked to connect him to our shir. I'm just going to send him the connection. Sorry. Just 1 second, sorry. Okay. So the more further. That if the foreigners they rebel, at least your locals are with you. The Talmidim asked of Shimon ben Yochai, why is it that the Eden deserve to be annihilated? Let's see, let me hear what you have to say. Said because they enjoyed the meal of that Russian, and that was the problem. And so it's not clear, is the problem because it was treif, or was the problem because they were using the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash? Doesn't spell it out exactly what the problem is. So he asked them back. Then only those who participated should be killed. Why kill the rest of the world? So they said to him, you say, because they bow down before Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah brings whether it was a statue or whether it was real Avodah Zarah. Said to him, if that's true, then why they should forgive them? They only pretended. They only pretended because they didn't really believe in it. So if the Eibush only pretended as if he was going to annihilate them, it was never the plan. That's what it says in the pasuk, that he did not punish them from his heart. The Chatzah in the courtyard, Ginas, the garden, Bisan, and the palace, Hamelach. Which one was it? Rav Shmuel. Chadam, Arol, Chatzah. Those people that were, not worthy much, they went to the courtyard. Chatzah, Arol, those who were more worthy, they went to the garden. Then they went to the garden. Arol, Bisan, those who for the palace, Bisan. Chadam, Arhashivim, the Chatzah. The Loyach if they first put everyone in the Chatzah. There's not enough room, they open up the garden. When they finally reached them, they filled up the space. Then at Shechel Basin, they went into the mansion. The Hechzikosen and they held them. The Masnidatan and the Braisa learned Hashivan B'chati, he put them in the courtyard, but if they wanted to go for spatzir, a stroll, a puzzle, and Shnei Pesachim, he opened up two doorways, Echad Legina, Echad Lebis, one to the garden and one to the palace. Then it says Chur Kar Pasut Chelis. What's Chur? Says Rav Amar. Rav says that Chur is Chori. Rav says that Chur is Chori. That was basically it's a Maisa Macher, it's needlework that is full of spaces and gaps and holes. Shmuel says Milas Levana, it was white material. He placed before them. Karpa was Karpas Karim Shal Pas. Cushions made out of linen. Al Glile Kesev Amud Sheish, on these poles of Kesev, Amud Sheish, and pillars of marble. Mitais Zav Chesed, beds made out of gold and silver. Tiny we said, the Kesev, those people that was worthy of silver got silver. How do you do that? There's be jealousy amongst them. Some people are going to rely on golden beds, some are silver beds. And the whole idea was he's trying to appease all of them, and how you appease them by making all these distinctions. Haim shall catch the beds are made out of silver, but the legs are made out of gold. Tracy says we're worried about envy. Then why did he say some people went to the garden, some people went into the palace, some people went into the courtyard? So Tracy says over there they didn't see each other, so it doesn't matter. Over here the beds are side by side, and one guy was lying on a silver bed, one gold. That will create a lot of divisiveness. Okay, Bahat, Vashesh, Amravasi, what is this? What kind of materials are they? Avonim, Shemischetis, Abalamida, stones, precious stones that the owners continuously search for them. It says in Pasik, it says Avne Neze, the stones of the crown, it proves to be challenged, Allah Mosai, to find them on the ground. The Darvis Chodes, what are these materials? Rav Amar Dori. There were rows and rows of these precious stones. Shmuel Amar Even Teva Yesh Bekrocha Yam V'Dorishma. There's a precious stone known by Dora. By Shiva Be'em Tasud, they played right in the middle of the table, and it reflected the light just like the middle of the day. That at that juncture, he made it easier for anybody in business. How to make it easier? So Rashi says he removed the taxes. So in the beginning of the story, he removed the taxes. But at the end of the story, he paid a yud in Megilah. He actually, by Yosemas, he imposed taxes. And before we say, made everybody poor. Ahashkaz is b'chleizov, Mekelim shainim. He filled them with golden vessels. And Mekelim shainim. What do you mean shainim? Mishunim v'ile. You should have said. They should have not said what do you call it? Shainim, but actually you should have said Mishunim. Mishunim means different ones. What Shainim means usually repeat. So why does it say Shainim? Says the Gemara. Sorry, I just lost the place. Omar Rav Zerav Yatz the basket came out. Omar the Shainim Kolu Mipnei Kelim. A basket came out to Achashverosh. The reason why the previous, the Belshazzar died is because they used the Kelim Beis Hamikdash, but Atem Shainim Behem, and you're repeating the same mistake. The Yain Malchus, the wine of the kingdom. What do you mean? What do you mean the Yain Malchus? And it was plenty. Rav. Omar Rav says Rav. You make sure that every person drank wine, not in abundant supply, but in years that older than they were. Everyone drank of the law. Nobody was forced. My kadas, which law? I'm going to make a kadosh the law of the Torah. By the kabbanis. There's much more carbon than the actual libation that came with it. He also made it in the same way. Einis wasn't forced. Each one drank the wine that they grew up with, that they're used to it. Lasses Ketzayin ish to follow each person's rotzen. Amar Rava Lasses Ketzayin Mordechai v'Haman, to follow the wishes of Mordechai and Haman, because they were the butlers. It says Ish Yehudi how do you know they're both called Ish? It said by Yehuda, it says by Mordechai, it says Ish Yehudi, and Haman Ish Tzar v'Oyev. Then it says Gam Vashti Malchus and Mishtei Noshi made a party based on Malchus. Only based on Malchus, should be based on Noshabel in her house. Both Achashverosh and Vashti were both very lewd, and they both intended to cause people to be promiscuous and cause them to do an Aveda. People say, Ihu bikari, that if the man wants to go down, he does something in a big way, in a grand way, he uses big pumpkins, his v'itza and his wife will follow in the same way, maybe v'butzli, he'll use smaller pumpkins, but at the end of the day, they're exactly the same. In the 7th day, when he was full of wine, inebriated. Only the 7th day he was inebriated, and before then he wasn't. Omar Rabba, this is alluding to something else. The 7th day is Shabbos. Yom HaShvi is Shabbos. Sheisrael oichlin v'shoisin, eating and drinking. Maschilin b'divrei Torah v'shvachas. They were started with Torah and sang. How do we start Shabbos? We start a meal. We sing the Gudim. We say our Torah. But that's how we have our Shabbos meal. When it comes to goyim, she'oichlin v'shoisin, they eat and they drink. And ein maschilin, they thought of a narishkeiten, and the same thing happened by the Sunnah. When they get inebriated, they lose complete control. The Chaim is Russia halolo emrin madi is nice. This person said the girls in Modeh, they're the prettiest. Halolo emrin Parsi is nice. The other one said no, the girls in Parsi are the prettiest. Look, Kayli Shani Mishtamer, my wife, ain't loy Modai, but loy Parsi, she's neither. Elakazdi, she's from Baba, but it's Tzaychel would like to see her. Hamlet said, yes, but she has to be naked. And why did Abish make this happen? The way you behave, that's how the Abish should behave with you, measure for measure. She would bring Jewish girls she would make them do housework, house chores, but make sure they were naked to denigrate them, and humiliate them, and force them to work on Shabbos. And that's why she got punished. Behind the it says, calm down, Vashti, he remembered Vashti, the Ace Asher Osasa, what she did, the Ace Asher Nigzala, what was the creed upon her? What she do? She did nothing, she didn't come. What she did with the girls at home, and that's why Nigzala was the creed that she should be killed this way. She refused to come. Mechdi would understand. You just said a minute ago that she was just as lewd as he was. They both want to evade him. My time was over. How couldn't she present herself? He said, you know what? Suddenly she looked ugly. She had this leprosy. In the Braisa we learned Baal Gabriel came along and added a tail to her, so she was embarrassed to step outside. He was infuriated. So the question, why was he so infuriated, ready to kill her? Amar says, she sent a message. Bar Ahuraidi, you stable hand, the Abba of my father, Abba Lekab, my father, Lekabel Alpha Chamer, drink 1,000 cups Shasi V'Loiravi. He wasn't intoxicated. Hu Gavra, Ishtati B'Chamra, you drink 1 cup, miyad. And immediately, you're drunk. Right? We heard that. He was infuriated. But I can't handle my drink. Who did turn to Rabban? We know the calendar. They knew the calendar. Amalu, he said to them, Dainuli, what should I do with my wife? She's a murder by Malchus. Amalu, the Chachamim said to themselves, hey, what should we do? Namely, if we tell to kill his wife, tomorrow, when he will get over his hangover and the wine influence will go away, and he will demand from us why we advise him to kill his wife. Namely, we tell him, don't kill her. He's so angry right now. He thinks that she humiliated the throne. And if we say, don't worry, it means we're taking her side. So there was wise. It said, they became destroyed. The Galina Martzenu, we were exiled. Nitla Eitzim, and we lost the ability to give advice. We're not settled because we're wandering around. We're not settled. We no longer have the capacity nor the the ability to rule when it comes to matters of capital punishment. Zil legabe Ammon and Moav, go to Ammon and Moav, the Yosef and Duchtayu. They are always sitting in one place. They've always been settled. Kechamra, like wine, the Yosef Adudai that sits on its sediment, it sits there and absorbs the time, and they have the taste. They said to him, it says, Shan and Moav and Moav was calm from youth. The Sheikh to Shmarav, and he sits there on his sediment. He wasn't thrown around from one vessel to another. Moav never went to exile. Okay, boy, that's why the taste is still there, and the smell hasn't disappeared. Now, the interesting taste is there. Taisa says you shouldn't mention Ammon because we learned in our brachas already that Sancheir came and moved, shifted all the people around. Ammon, and but Moav wasn't shifted around, and therefore the fact the pasuk says that Moav was still settled and everything else. But what's interesting about this Taisa is he says also that Mitzrayim was never moved about. So not only Moav was moved about Mitzrayim, he says here that Shloi Bilbul Sancheir Mitzrayim v'Loi Bilbul Moav. Where did Tesis get that he wasn't involved in Mitzrayim? In fact, the Ritva answers in Yuma why you're allowed to go to Mitzrayim today is because the people are not the same. But Tesis clearly says that they are. So where does Tesis get that from? Well, what's his basis? Interesting. Then the Gemara continues. About Korabei love, close to him, Karshna Sheser Admosa Sashish. Amar Levi. What are these names? These advisors. The Gemara says, Kol pasuk that should go to them, but this pasuk is actually said by Malachim to the Eibishter regarding Kabbalas. Kashna, Amar Baruch Hu, Klum Mikriv V'Necha Kadim B'nei Shana. Did they bring lambs that are a year old? Kederech Shekriv Yisrael V'Necha. The way you didn't bring your Kabbalas. Sheisa, Klum Mikriv V'Necha. Sheisa has two words. Shtei Toidim, two doves. Ad Masa, Klum Banul V'Necha Mizbech Adama Mizbech made on earth. Tashish, Klum Shimsh V'Necha Big Dekuna. Did they serve you with big dekuna? Now, what is Tashish with big dekuna? The Chesiv says, "With Tashish v'Shayim v'Yishba." One of the diamonds on the what do you call it? On the breastplate was Tashish. Maras kula mirza b'dam. Every carbon you have to stand there and keep on spinning the blood. They were using the spoon and stirring the blood so that it shouldn't solidify. Did they ever do that? Marsana kul mirza b'menachal v'necha. Did they mix the menachal for you? Memuchen klum hechinu shulchan v'necha. Did they ever prepare a table for you? They never did. So why would you want to help the goyim out? Muchen said, Tana, we learned Muchen said Haman. Who was this Muchen that gave advice? Haman. And he's the one that said, we have to do something about Chavashti, otherwise all the women in the world are going to take over the house. This feminist issues was started, way back then. Rabbi Shlomo Riskin told me that when he went, after he became rabbi in Lincoln Square Synagogue in 1965, I think it was, he and his wife went to the Rebbe in Yechidus, and he went many times. He went to the Rebbe in Yechidus, and this time he asked the Rebbe, as a rabbi in the Modern Orthodox Synagogue in 1965, what are the issues that he should be aware of that he has to learn how to deal with? And the Rebbe then said to him that the main issue that a rabbi will have to deal with now are issues about feminists and the role of women in Yiddishkeit. He said when he went out to the Yechidus, he and his wife looked at each other like, what was Rebbe talking about? 1965, 64, feminism in the Orthodox world didn't exist. He says how right the Rebbe was. But truth of the matter is, here we have Haman was talking about already back then. Why is it called Muchen? It's already set aside to be punished. He was the last name mentioned, and yet he's the only one who gave advice. Okay, now interesting is, Taisa says here Muchen. I'll just read the Taisa here. Yesh Medrash, the last Taisa on the page, is a Medrash Shahaya Daniel. The Muchen was actually Daniel. Ulefi Shahaya Nossi. The Saris, he was married to this woman who was like a governor or an officer. Shahisa Gedayla Mimenu. She was more influential and she was superior to Daniel. He wanted her to speak Lashon Kodesh, and she refused. She wanted to speak the native tongue. Yoatz Lasses came, so he came up with advice that men have to control their wives, and therefore we have to do something about Vashti. Pretty amazing. Anyway, back to Gemara. Okay, Amar Kana. The Kansha Hedjid Kavit Barosh Lias Kalish say the base. Every man should control his house. Amar Rava. Il Mole, this is an unbelievable miracle. Il Mole Igos Hadashainis, if it wouldn't have been for this first letter, Loinishtaya Misaynei She Yisrael Soripol. Now, one year would be left alive. Why is that? Because when Haman sent out a letter, it was a nis that in other we will destroy the Eden. The Goyim waited, did nothing. Why didn't they do anything earlier? Why did they wait to the very last minute or to that day? because of the first letter that Haman wrote. Why? Amri said, "My hide is shadalon." What is a silly letter he wrote to us now, about husbands controlling the wife? Leah's kol yisrael beis pshita. Of course, that's how it has to be. We need Haman to tell us. I feel we need everyone knows that is how it's supposed to be. So he said here, because afilu korcha the basic, even somebody who is just a tailor or something, or a weaver in his own house, partial heavy in his own house, he's an officer. He's in charge. You don't need Haman to tell us. So because of that silly letter, when he wrote him a second letter about the Eden, they didn't take him seriously. The Yavka El Pkidim, he appointed these officers. Every intelligent person does with Seichel. On the other hand, a fool is Yifresh, Iveles, he does stupid things. When he was old and he needed a young woman, so he told the slaves, so find a young girl. Come on, to every person who had a daughter, Isinella brought her along and tried to convince her that my daughter would be more suitable. Uksil Yifresh Iveles, but Uksil, when he spells out, it's Narishkeit. He pointed officers, come on to every single father who had a daughter, not only Esther when hiding, everyone hiding, because they knew that Achashverosh is going to sleep with every girl that goes there for the contest. Even then, he'll just dispose of her. He says, Ish Yehudi, sounds like even Shev Yehuda. Ish Yemini, my comment, Ili Yechusekasi, come and tell you his yichus, the Yachsi, Ozil, Abin Yamin. So, first of all, why don't you go back to the Yamin? Elamai Ishno Hani. In fact, they're not his yichus. These are all descriptions, adjectives describing Mordechai. Nikra is called Ben Yoed, Ben Sheda, named Yisrael. He illuminated the eyes of the Yidden with Tadia and so on. Bitfilosai through his davening. Ben Shimi, Ben Sheshomet Filosai, the son of people that Abish heard his tefillah. Ben Kisha Hekel Shararachmi, he knocked on the door, the heavenly doors of compassion. The Yisrael was open to him. Korele Yehudi is called Yehudi. Alma L'chayim Yehuda Kashem Yehuda. The Korele Yemini Alma Yamakasim. Which one is it? If you hold its yichus, did it come from Yamin? It come from Yehuda. Aram Nachman Mordechai Muchte Ben Emusei Hagen. He's saying over here that Mordechai was actually crowned with all of these different names. What do you mean? Because Amar Shumalei. What do you mean he had different names? His father came from Binyamin, his mother came from Yehuda. That's why he's called by both names. But Rabbanan say Mishpachas Mizgara Zubazu Faket. Not that each tribe claimed Mordechai was our descendant, how wonderful it is. Each one said, no, Mordechai is your descendant, how terrible it is. What do you mean? These were the Golos mentality people said, oh, Mordechai, because Mordechai refused to bow down to Haman, the whole tzara happened. It's all Mordechai's fault. So each one said, oh, you, because you're Yehuda. And Gemara explains, Mishpacha Yehuda Meres, Anogorim. First we're saying that they took pride. Mishpacha Yehuda says, Anogorim, the Messiah Mordechai. First, this explanation is a little bit around, sorry. That each one took pride and said, Yehuda claimed that they're the ones who deserve. Why? Because Shimi ben Geda, who Mordechai comes from Shimi, they were told to, and Shlomo delayed killing him so that he can have children and a family and so on before Shlomo killed Shimi. So we see that, what do you call it? So Yehuda says, we are the ones who deserve all the credit for allowing Mordechai to be born. And I got in the Messiah Mordechai, David did not kill Shimi ben Geda. Mishpachet ben Yamin, he came from us. We deserve credit. Rava says, Pumfake. Knesset Ramah all the way around. Look how terrible Mordechai is. Look what he did for us. Umashilim li Yemini. Uma Asali Yehudi. Look what he did, the terrible things that he did. What did he do? The Lekotli David Shimi, Yehuda's fault, because they didn't kill Shimi, otherwise would have been saved. Mordechai would have been alive, would antagonized Haman. This Yalad Menei Mordechai, the Mekani base Haman, he antagonized Haman. Uma Shilim Lo Yemini. And what does it mean? It says that Benjamin paid. So the Kotli Shol Agog. On the other hand, it's Benjamin's fault because they did not kill Agog, and Agog, the pregnant woman, and had Haman. So they're like fighting who's worse. The ones who produced Mordechai, the ones who produced Haman. This Almanei Haman, the Mitzayel Yisrael, that caused the Yidin Tsar. Rabbi Yechon says, he comes from the Yemen. So why is he called Yehudi? Am I called Yehudi? Yehudi is not a tribe. Yehudi is a description. He denied Avodah Zarah. Anyone who denies Avodah Zarah, Nikra Yehudi, is called the Yehudi. You can see if it says, Isi Govrin Yehudai. Because it says that by Mishol Va'azaya, these are the Yidden who do not agree with Avodah Zarah. Okay, we will stop over here and we'll continue Mitzvah Shabbos.